I call Andrew Williams.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I take a call on behalf of New Zealand First, and we oppose this bill most rigorously. On the walls of this chamber we have some famous names such as Passchendaele, such as Gallipoli, such as Egypt, such as Messines, and other great battles where our young soldiers and servicemen and servicewomen went off to fight for democracy for this country, to bring freedom from oppression. The Human Rights Commissioner, David Rutherford, came to our Local Government Environment Select Committee and indirectly commented that it was a poor reflection on this country that, in fact, we had fought for democracy, but democracy was being taken away from New Zealanders. For the Human Rights Commissioner, the Chief Commissioner of the Human Rights Commission, to liken us to other regimes around the world that have removed democracy from their people was quite astonishing. So astonishing that the members from the National Party sitting on that committee took exception to it and tried to challenge the Commissioner for his comments that he made. But he didn't back down. And despite some heated retort from the National Party members who didn't like to be compared to Fiji, who didn't like to be compared to regimes in Europe in the First and Second World War, had to stomach those comments from the Chief Commissioner of the Human Rights Commission. He stated, "The Commission considers that no good reason has been provided for extending the present legislation. The lack of public consultation about content or the continuing need for the legislation is an abuse of the democratic process and does not reflect the real needs of Cantabrians. In our view," that's the Commission's view, "the present legislation has the potential to further exacerbate the resentment that has arisen in Canterbury as a result." He also said, "Our view continues to be that the undemocratic way in which the original legislation was introduced and its continuance is simply wrong from a human rights perspective." Well, that's very good coming from Mr John Hayes from the Wairarapa, who similarly probably will turn to the Wairarapa people very shortly and say that he doesn't also support the Wairarapa having a view on its own democratic representation. And Mr Hayes, perhaps next year at next year's 2014 election, you'll be prepared to stand up and say, do I stand with Wairarapa or do I stand with my National Party mates and sell them down the river? And I know, Mr Hayes, where you'll be selling them down the river, but hopefully, the people of the Wairarapa will sell you down the river at the same time. Mr Chairman, we sat through the hearings and we listened to 95 oral submissions. 90 of the 95 oral submissions opposed this bill. 90 out of 95. I've sat on all sorts of things in my time in local and central government, but I've never seen such an overwhelming level of opposition to something as this. The only ones that supported it were the regular mates, the federated farmers and the other National Party mates of the National Party, the regular stooges who go along, the Business New Zealand and that, who go along to support their good old mates because they know that there's something in it for them if they support the National Party on this. Mr Speaker, it was also amazing that when we read the impact report on this, that Dame Margaret Baisley and her commissioners, who we've heard have done a good job and who the Minister also said have done a very good job, they also recommended that there be transition back to a democratic process in Canterbury. Now for Dame Margaret Baisley, who is so esteemed within public service, to herself and her commissioners recommend that we return to democracy in Canterbury, and for that to be ignored, and the Ministry's advice to the government to be ignored, is a sad indictment on this government. But it's not surprising, because they've got a history in Auckland of doing it. The National Party in their election manifesto prior to the last election said they would consult with the people of Auckland on the outcomes of the Auckland Regional Governance Royal Commission of Inquiry. What happened, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Williams.
What happened? They got re-elected, and the party manifesto and the party promise to consult with the people of Auckland went out the window, and within 9 days of the Royal Commission reporting and recommending a restructuring of Auckland along certain lines, this national government threw it out the window, 800-page report, costing close to $5 million, with international consultants from all over the world bringing best practice to the recommendations of Auckland, threw it out and replaced it with a 33 or 34-page report printed on A4 photocopy paper from Rodney Hyde with his plan for Auckland.
Order. We're on this.
Mr. Chairman, what I'm saying is there is a systemic problem here with this National Party, with this government, in that they don't believe in democracy. They didn't believe in democracy in Auckland. They don't believe in democracy in Canterbury. Quite clearly, they're moving to remove democracy from other parts of New Zealand because they've got their eyes on the Wairarapa, they've got their eyes on Napier Hastings, they've got their eyes on the Waikato area, they've got their eyes on other parts of New Zealand as well, and quite frankly, they would like to just make local government extensions of the ministries in Wellington. And if they could have local government as extensions of the ministries in Wellington, where they could control them from the ministerial level, they would love to do that. They would love to do that. People in local government, including mayors and councillors throughout New Zealand, who are National Party or former National Party supporters.
Order. No. We're actually on part one.
Yep.
And I'd actually ask the member to come back to part one. These other things may be of interest to some members, but they're not in relation to the bill, and we're on part one.
Thank you,
Andrew Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so coming back to Canterbury and the lack of democracy, which is mirrored in this whole situation. It is also because of the need to basically control water.
No, good idea.
And around the world, the one thing that people go to war for, countries go to war for, states and regions go to war for, is water. And in this case, much of this stems back to the control of water and the control by federated farmers and the farmers of the water in Canterbury against the wishes of the greater population of Canterbury. And the National Party knows that to meet the demands of the federated farmers in Canterbury and to ensure those water rights are preserved and absolutely guaranteed for their farmer mates, then they are going to make sure that there is no widespread democracy in Canterbury to return to that. Mr. Chairman, it is disappointing. We certainly would have liked to have seen a transition back as Dame Margaret Baisley recommended. Certainly in the next government, New Zealand First will be ensuring that that does happen, and I like to hear the fact that the Labour Party has confirmed that they support it as well. And we can say to the people of Canterbury, help is on its way. To the people of Canterbury, help is on its way, because we're not going to allow this to continue, and we're going to continue to honour those who fought for this country, as shown on the walls in this chamber, that they didn't go to fight for democracy for nothing.
I call Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's interesting that Nicky Wagner said that part one was really just a technical matter